Chapter 1. The Journey to Kumasi. The dawn stretched lazily over Wa, its golden hues spilling across the dry plains and modest clay compounds. The air was thick with the scents of wood smoke and morning dew, and the town, still half asleep, seemed reluctant to let go of the night. Salifu stood by the gate of his family's compound, gripping a small leather bag that felt heavier than it should. Inside were his most precious belongings, a pair of scuffed shoes, a faded photograph of his family, and a pouch of coins his mother had scraped together, selling millet at the market.
His siblings, Amina and Kofi, clung to their mother's wrapper, their wide, tearful eyes locked on him. Amina, barely 10, spoke first, her voice soft but trembling. "Will you come back for us, Salifu? You won't forget us, will you?" Salifu knelt, placing his hands gently on her tiny shoulders. "Forget you," he said, forcing a smile despite the tightness in his chest. "How could I? I'll send for you when I've made it in Kumasi. We'll live like kings and queens. You'll see." She nodded, though her frown deepened. Kofi, younger still, hid behind her, peeking out with solemn eyes. His mother stepped forward. Her weathered face, etched with lines of worry and strength, betrayed none of the tears she held back. She held out an intricately woven charm, its beads worn but vibrant, tied together with a faded feather. "Take this," she said, tying it around his neck. Her voice was steady, yet each word felt like a plea. "It's from your father's side. It will protect you if your heart stays pure. Remember, Salifu, no amount of gold is worth losing your soul." The low rumble of a bus engine in the distance shattered the moment. Salifu rose, adjusting the strap of his bag, and looked toward the road. The bus, old and battered, spewed black smoke as it lumbered closer. He turned back, offering a quick embrace. His mother held him tightly, her breath warm against his ear. "Don't let Kumasi change you," she whispered. "Promise me." "I promise," he replied, though the words felt hollow. The bus ride was a test of endurance. Packed with traders, goats, and yams, the air inside was stifling, heavy with the mingling scents of sweat, roasted groundnuts, and dust. Salifu wedged himself into a corner seat beside a woman, clutching a basket of dried fish. Every bump in the road sent her basket lurching, and the pungent smell clung to him. The fields of Wa faded behind him, replaced by open plains and scattered baobab trees. The landscape stretched endlessly, a vast reminder of the distance he was putting between himself and home. To distract himself, he struck up conversations with the other passengers. They were mostly traders, laughing loudly and swapping stories about Kumasi's bustling markets and endless opportunities. But one man caught his attention. He sat near the back, an old man with a cane and a face like weathered stone. His eyes, clouded but piercing, seemed to hold secrets. "Kumasi is a city of dreams," the old man said when he caught Salifu's gaze. His voice was low, carrying a gravity that silenced the chatter around him. "But dreams are double-edged. The streets are ruled by men who fear nothing. Not bullets, not blades. They have juju, the kind that bends reality itself." A ripple of unease passed through the passengers. Salifu laughed nervously, brushing off the words. "Juju," he said. "You mean charms and curses?" The old man's expression didn't waver. "Call it what you will. They don't just rule the streets, they rule the shadows. Be careful, boy. Kumasi devours the unprepared." Salifu nodded politely, but the warning clung to him, even as laughter returned to the bus. By the time the bus rolled into Kumasi, night had fallen. The city unfolded before him like a dream, or perhaps a nightmare. Neon lights glowed against the dark sky, casting long shadows over crowded streets. The chaos hit him instantly. Hawkers shouting their wares, motorbikes weaving recklessly through traffic, and the distant beat of high-life music mingling with car horns. The bus pulled into a dimly lit terminal, and Salifu stepped off, clutching his bag tightly. The air was thick with the smell of diesel fumes and grilled meat. He felt the city's pulse, alive and relentless, and for a moment, he hesitated. This wasn't Wa. This was something entirely different. A fellow passenger, a wiry young man named Ebo, nudged his shoulder. First time in Kumasi? Salifu nodded. Ebo grinned, revealing a gold tooth. Stick with me. I know a cheap guest house near Adam Market. You don't want to wander these streets alone at night. The guest house was as modest as Salifu expected. A cramped room with peeling paint and a single, sagging mattress. The air smelled of damp wood and something faintly metallic. As he lay on the bed, the sounds of the city seeped through the thin walls. Laughter, shouts, the occasional roar of a motorbike. He was on the edge of sleep when a scream sliced through the air. It was sharp, guttural, and then silence. His heart pounded as he sat up, straining to hear more. The city outside seemed to hold its breath. Then, footsteps, quick, heavy, echoed down the street. He moved to the window, peering through the cracked glass. In the dim glow of a street lamp, he saw two figures dragging a third, limp and unresponsive, into an alley. His stomach tightened. The old man's warning replayed in his mind. Kumasi devours the unprepared. The morning light did little to shake Salifu's unease. Determined to start anew, he ventured into the city, the energy of Kumasi hitting him like a wave. The streets were alive with vendors hawking oranges, roasted plantains, and vibrant Kent cloth. Taxi drivers honked impatiently, while children darted through the crowd, their laughter piercing the chaos. He wandered aimlessly, taking in the sights and smells, until he found himself in Adam Market. The sheer scale of it overwhelmed him. Stalls crammed with electronics, spices, fabrics, and more. The air was thick with the scent of smoked fish and shea butter, and the noise was deafening. As he navigated the labyrinth of stalls, a young man bumped into him. Salifu barely caught a glimpse of the man's face before he vanished into the crowd. His hand flew to his pocket. It was empty. The man had taken his money. By sheer luck, Salifu found work at a mechanic shop owned by a wiry, sharp-eyed man named Ya. Work hard, Ya told him, tossing him a grease-stained rag. No slacking. The day passed in a blur of clanking tools and shouted instructions. Salifu focused on the rhythm of work, letting it drown out his worries. But by afternoon, the shop felt eerily silent. A sleek black car pulled up, its glossy surface gleaming in the sunlight. Two men stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, their presence commanding. Their skin was marked with strange scars that seemed to glimmer faintly, like something alive. They handed Ya a folded piece of paper. His hands trembled as he took it, nodding quickly. The men left without a word, their departure as abrupt as their arrival. What was that about? Salifu asked one of the other workers, Kweku, as he wiped grease from his hands. Kweku glanced around nervously before leaning in. Protection money, he whispered. Kwesi Arthur's men. They come every month. If you don't pay, he trailed off, his expression grim. What happens if you don't pay? Bad things, Kweku said. Fires. Disappearances. And don't even think about fighting them. Bullets don't hurt them, and knives break against their skin. Salifu laughed, but it was hollow. The scars on the men's bodies flashed in his mind, their faint glow sending a shiver down his spine. That night, his walk back to the guest house took him through a narrow alley. The air felt heavier here, the shadows deeper. Ahead, a commotion broke out, shouts, the thud of fists landing. Salifu froze as he saw three men attacking a fourth. The victim fought valiantly, but his punches seemed to bounce off his attackers like they were made of stone. One of them drew a knife and plunged it into his chest. There was no blood. Instead, a black mist rose from the wound, swirling like smoke before disappearing into the night. The man collapsed, lifeless. The attackers turned, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. One of them saw Salifu. He ran. As he bolted the door of his room and collapsed onto the bed, his mother's words echoed in his mind. No wealth is worth losing your soul. What had he walked into? To be continued. Like, subscribe, and share to join Salifu's journey. What lies in the shadows of Kumasi? Can Salifu survive its treacherous streets? Find out in Chapter 2, coming next week.